Leah Gasser-Ordaz and Neysa Nankervis from Public Counsel. They're going to be talking about public benefits and how our clients can access them. I know that we're lawyers, not social workers, but obviously getting the best outcome for our clients sometimes involves getting them connected with the services they need so that they can actually get everything together and get through their case plan. And it really behooves us to at least know about what's available and know that Public Counsel is available as a resource that we can refer our clients to. If your client is having issues with their Medi-Cal, etc., and you don't know all the ins and outs, Public Counsel is there. So they're going to be providing their contact information, and that's something to keep in your back pocket for going forward when you have clients with these types of issues. So I'll let them get started.
Hello everyone, thanks Amy. My name is Neysa Nankervis. I'm an attorney in the Transition Age Youth Project. Leah and I represent youth who are in the foster care system, on probation, at risk, victims of trafficking, etc. And we want to just go over real quickly what else Public Counsel does so you're all aware of the resources that we can provide your team. We have 11 different projects with well over 70 attorneys I think by now and 5 social workers. So we do immigration work, we have a veterans rights project, we have a homeless prevention project with Shriver in there for landlord-tenant issues. Transition Age Youth falls under Children's Rights Project. And then we have a consumer fraud project and a few others. So we're really a wealth of knowledge in a lot of different areas. And to contact us, if you contact that number there, there's a directory and it will take you to the appropriate project within our office. And then that's our website. So today we're going to cover very briefly, because we only have now less than an hour. So first of all, if your client needs cash, it's GR or CalWORKs for those who have children. For food, it's CalFresh and WIC. If your client needs medical coverage, we'll go over Medi-Cal briefly. And then for housing, we'll go over CES, which is the system that they can find housing through.
All right. So, hi everybody, I'm Leah. I'm going to be talking about cash aid. And so when we talk about cash aid, we're talking really about 2 different kinds of realms. DPSS, which is Department of Public Social Services, and that's like county aid. And then I'm not going to cover this for purposes of the presentation because we just don't have enough time. But the Social Security Administration also administers cash aid. And that would be if your client has work history, they might qualify for Social Security benefits, or if they're permanently disabled, they might qualify for supplemental security income, but again, we're not going to cover that in this presentation. All right, so let's talk about GR. The maximum amount of general relief that a single individual can receive is $221 per month. And this is cash aid through a county welfare office. So, you know, in LA County, there are about 20 to 30 different offices spread across the whole of LA. And so, and there are ample resources online to point your client in the right direction if they're not receiving any sort, they don't have any income, they're homeless, and they need some sort of like cash aid assistance, then I would always recommend sending them to the GR office to be evaluated for benefits. Eligibility requirements, you do have to be a U.S. citizen or a legal permanent resident, so you have to have your green card. If you're undocumented, you're not going to be able to qualify for this benefit. It's also important to know that there is a residency requirement with regard to general relief, so an individual has to be residing in Los Angeles County for at least 15 days before they can qualify for GR. Now, the way that, you know, the inquiry goes is that DPSS will just, while they're evaluating the application, they'll simply ask the person, how many days have you been here? And so the person will, you know, respond verbally, and that's sufficient to establish county residency. So there's no like explicit like document or proof that they need to provide other than a sworn statement. Income and resource eligibility, you can't have more than $50 cash on the day of application. There's personal property, you can't exceed $500. But basically this is here to kind of show you that qualifying for this benefit, you really have, they call GR the benefit of last resort, because you really have to have exhausted every other resource and source of income that you could have in order to qualify. So most likely, if you're doing an intake with a client and they tell you that they're receiving GR, they're probably homeless or very much at risk of homelessness. So, certainly it's okay I would encourage you to ask that question to find that out. And then, we do have a homelessness prevention project at Public Counsel that helps individuals experiencing homelessness with all sorts of legal issues. So, you should feel free to refer. And then what to know about GR. Terminations are common. So, your client might be receiving this benefit, but it might be intermittent, like on and off, because there are a lot of welfare to work requirements. There are a lot of documentation verification requirements. And so, it's really difficult, especially, again, if your client is at risk of homelessness or homeless, to kind of keep up with all those requirements. So, it's likely that in the course of your representation with them, which as I understand is over several months, can even be a year, they might get terminated. And if so, if you hear that they were receiving GR and then they get terminated, again, send them to Public Counsel or to a legal aid resource, because we provide that assistance to help them get reinstated, oftentimes without having to go to the DPSS office to get the issue resolved. We can resolve it directly with DPSS. Other thing to know, clients with disabilities who apply at DPSS will get referrals from the case managers there to receive supplemental security income, which is SSI. And that benefit is a monthly benefit that's much higher than the $221 that individuals receiving GR receive. So to the extent that you are working with clients with disabilities, you hear that they're on GR, but you think that they have like a severe mental or physical health disability, I would refer them to DPSS or to a legal aid agency to get help applying for SSI. SSI has a really high standard, legal standard. In order to meet that, you need a lot of medical documentation, a long history showing, evidencing that this person has a disability, and it's really difficult, even with all that, for someone applying for SSI on their own to be approved for the first time. So that's why we'd always recommend referrals to legal aid organizations that specialize in that kind of work. All right. So moving on to does anybody have any questions about GR before I move on? Okay. So moving on to CalWORKs. CalWORKs is cash aid for parents living with children under 19 years old. So, in many of your cases, you may have a child that's been removed from the home of the parent who's receiving CalWORKs, but maybe that parent still has children that are living with them. In that case, they would qualify for CalWORKs benefits. Likely, there's a lot of other income and eligibility requirements, but if they are low income, it doesn't hurt to let them know that CalWORKs is something that they should go to DPSS and apply for. There are time limits for adults, so CalWORKs is evaluated depending on like they call it your AU, your assistance unit. And parents can be part of the assistance unit, but they do have a time clock. So after 48 months of receiving CalWORKs benefits with an eligible child in the home, the parents can do something called timing out. And therefore, after that, the amount of CalWORKs would be reduced. And then it would become like a child-only household. So it's important to be aware of that, just because a lot of times, CalWORKs benefits ends up being a lot less than what it originally is, and people always have questions about that. In order to be eligible for CalWORKs, you have to be a U.S. citizen, a legal permanent resident, and a resident of California. So if you're undocumented, you're not going to qualify for CalWORKs. You also have to, most of the time, engage in welfare to work activities in order to continue to be eligible for CalWORKs, and their welfare to work program is called GAIN. So if you hear your clients talking about their benefits and talking about being in the GAIN program, that's what they mean. They have to do these, a lot of requirements, again, in order to maintain their cash aid benefit. The amount that of cash aid that someone's gonna receive, again, depends on the number of eligible individuals in the home. So, and the income requirements and things like that are different depending on how many people are living in the assistance unit. So it depends on family size, but for example, a 3-person household, in order to have low enough income to qualify for CalWORKs, must have a gross monthly income less than $1,342. So this is again a benefit for folks who are low income. These numbers do change every year, so it's important that, just to know that most of the time what happens is that the income limits will rise every year depending on like inflation and things like that. Resource limits is $2,250 in most cases. And so resources include things like vehicles, properties, like phones, clothing, things of that nature. So if you're gonna send your client to DPSS, again, most likely, you're talking about someone, at least in Los Angeles, who's at risk of homelessness. All right, so some common questions that I think a lot of people always ask about CalWORKs are, can my client get CalWORKs while they're separated from all their children? The answer is no. In order to qualify for CalWORKs, you do need to have a child in the household. So if you have a client who is receiving CalWORKs, but then all their children are detained, and placed with like the other parent, for example, or in foster care, then what that client needs to do immediately is contact DPSS and let them know that they no longer have any eligible children in the household. Because what will happen is if that client doesn't report the change in household composition to DPSS, they'll get something called an overpayment. And depending on how many months go by of them not telling DPSS, it can amount to like thousands of dollars that they would owe back to the county. So really important to let people know, to inform DPSS of any changes. And if the person does have all their children removed and no longer qualifies for CalWORKs, they can always go to DPSS, terminate their CalWORKs benefit, and then apply for general relief, because general relief is for single individuals. Next question. I know that you guys might not have a lot of teen parent clients, but my understanding is that you do have a few. So with this question, do teen parents need to do welfare to work programs? And the answer is no. If they are continuing to go to high school, to finish high school, or to get their GED, then they can enroll in a program called CalLearn. And that program, like I said, if they're continuing to go to school and they're getting, they're getting their grades, they're moving forward to graduate from high school, then they would not be required to do like the GAIN program. And also the good news about that is that 48-month time clock that I was talking about previously, that would stop, and they actually would not run that clock out while they're in CalLearn. The other good news is if that youth is getting, if that young person is getting grades C average or higher, then they can turn in their report cards to DPSS up to 4 times a year and get $100 for having decent grades on their report card. And then when they graduate from high school, if they're still enrolled in CalLearn, they can actually get $500 from DPSS for doing that. All right, next question. Oh yeah.
So if the kids are detained and they were receiving CalWORKs, I heard a couple years ago about a program through DPSS called Linkages that would allow them to continue to receive services, but we had to make that request at detention hearings. Is Linkages still in place? or is that gone?
That's a good question, and I don't know the answer to that question. But we should take a note of that and look into it, and we can get back to you.
Okay.
Next question, what happens when the 48-month clock is up? Is there any way to get more time? And the reason why you want more time, again, is so that the parent will continue to be, part of the assistance unit and continue to receive extra money in the CalWORKs monthly allotment. And so there are a lot of ways to do that, to stop the clock. One of them is if if it's your client who's applying and they're a domestic violence survivor, that will stop the clock. And they can continue to receive money beyond 48 months for themselves as part of the assistance unit. Other ways is if they have like a legitimate reason for being exempt from the welfare to work program, they can also continue to run their clock. And so some ways that you would be exempt from gain would include if you have like a mental or physical health disability that would prevent you from engaging in welfare to work program, then you would not have to do the gain program. If you if you were homeless, if you don't have money to be able to afford like childcare or transportation to help you get to and from the welfare to work program, and you tell DPSS that and they find that that's a legitimate reason for you not being able to do gain, then those are other ways to be exempt. But there's a lot of them. And I think the last question, what other programs does CalWORKs offer that could help my client? So CalWORKs offers a lot of programs, especially if your client is doing gain. They do offer childcare. They offer 4 different kinds of housing assistance, and I know that that's really important right now, and so I'm just going to briefly talk about those. They also offer DV counseling and substance use counseling, and I tried to look up before I came here, but I couldn't find if maybe like those forms of counseling that they're providing me, like some of the forms of counseling that maybe might be court ordered at children's court for your clients to engage in. I don't know the answer to that. I hope it would. Yeah, question?
You said that they can get more time if they're domestic violence survivors. What qualifies them as a domestic violence survivor? Like, do there have to be criminal charges? Is it self-reporting?
Yeah, it's self-reporting.
Okay.
You don't even need to like bring a police report, and it actually can be either past domestic violence or current domestic violence that's going on in the home. So, so it's like a really broad like way for someone to qualify. And really quickly to talk about the housing assistance. So they have, CalWORKs provides temporary shelter money, and that's for someone to stay up to 16 days in a hotel. Again, they have to qualify for CalWORKs and they have to be enrolled in GAIN to be eligible, but if somebody needs like emergency hotel vouchers or something like that, you might want to think about sending them down to the CalWORKs office to apply. Yeah.
The services you mentioned, the domestic violence counseling and the substance abuse counseling, are those provided for free?
Through the program. Yeah, and I mean, there is a cost. The cost is that the person has to be like, going through the GAIN program and meeting their welfare to work requirements, but yeah, they can get free. And actually the substance use counseling can qualify also as a way to meet their welfare to work requirements. So they don't have to do like extra work hours on top of the substance use classes. Yeah.
And are those classes on a weekly basis or once every 2 weeks? How often are they, do you know?
No, I don't know. I would assume it kind of depends on the office and the provider.
But again, that's only when the kids are with the parents.
Correct. So you might have, again, I don't know like how often you have removals where only one child's removed but there's still a child in the home. Or if you have like an instance where a child's removed and placed with a relative caregiver, the relative caregiver could go apply for CalWORKs. But I also know that there are like foster care benefits available to those folks, and those might be more money for the caregiver. So it really, again, depends on the particular situation. and set of circumstances.
What has to occur before they can apply? Because we have a lot of clients where a lot of the time the issue with getting their kid back is housing. So it's like if it's something that's going to happen immediately, like as soon as you get housing or whatever, you get your kid back, would they still be able to apply for these kinds of programs? Or
Yes, yeah, you can, I mean, none of these programs, like, you can have housing and be in an apartment and receive these benefits. Living in housing wouldn't disqualify you. And is that what you were asking?
it's more about, you have to have a kid to qualify for CalWORKs. But sometimes there's like this limbo in between, we'll give you your kid, but we need you to get out of like your boyfriend's house or that kind of thing.
So then I would say, like, maybe, you know, if this person is receiving CalWORKs and they need to get out of the house in order to keep their kid, they should go to DPSS and ask for some of these housing assistance programs, because there is, like I said, the temporary shelter money where they can get 16 days in a hotel, payment for that, and then maybe they can, you know, immediately move to that hotel, be there for the 16 days, and while they're there, be looking for other forms of housing. Yeah.
And I had a case where the judge made a home of parents order, stayed the order, so the parents could then go to CalWORKs and get the funding that they need because the department was concerned about the funding situation.
Other forms of housing assistance, and I want to make sure I move on so we can get to some of the other benefits, but there is money for permanent housing, and you know, you do have to show that your monthly rent is no more than 80% of your, or actually the household's income, but you can get some money for permanent housing, and it'll cover like security deposits like last month's rent and utilities. Emergency assistance to prevent eviction, so if your client is at risk of eviction, they can go to the CalWORKs office and CalWORKs will give them up to $3,000. Hopefully, you know, the landlord would agree to accept that money, but they can get that as well. There's moving assistance, and so if somebody's moving, they can get up to $2,500 once in a lifetime to cover like moving costs. And then 4-month rental assistance. If the client uses any of these other programs like the permanent housing, the emergency assistance to prevent eviction, or the moving assistance, they can actually also request up to 4 months of help with rent, and DPSS would give them $500 for those 4 months.
And what's the time frame, the turnaround to requesting and receiving the financial assistance?
For CalWORKs, it's 30 days. So you go in, and then DPSS has up to 30 days to approve the application. Most of the time, I think it's much shorter, but that is like statutorily how much time they have, so it can be that long. All right, and now I'm going to turn it back over to, oh, just kidding, I have another slide. All right, so let's talk about ineligibility for these benefits. So there are no criminal convictions that's going to make someone ineligible for any of these benefits, but if somebody is in violation of parole or probation, or they have an outstanding felony warrant, they're not going to be eligible for this assistance until they resolve that. So again, another good reason why you might want to refer your clients to public counsel or to the public defender's office to get more information about what the outstanding warrant is. And then also, if the applicant has an open benefits case in another county, and DPSS finds that because they do fingerprint applicants in order to check for that, then what will need to happen is that that person will need to contact the county where their open case is located, get that case closed, and then return to DPSS to apply. And again, that is something that, you know, public counsel provides assistance on, contacting those other counties and getting those cases closed.
So now I'm going to talk a little bit about the food that's available for your clients. So in LA, there are a lot of food pantry options. I recommend your clients call 211 to locate the closest food pantry by them. At Public Counsel, we have one about 2 blocks away, and whenever one of my clients are in need of immediate food assistance, I can walk there and get a bag of non-perishable items for them, or 2 bags depending on the size of their family. So it's really good to know where the closest one is for your clients. And then there's also CalFresh, which used to be called food stamps. A lot of people still know it as food stamps. The name was recently changed due to the stigma that surrounds the term food stamps. The government's really been trying to get more people to apply because it's a very underutilized benefit. So they have changed the name, and they are actually trying to show that you can get more healthier options as well. Like now you can get use your CalFresh at farmers markets. And then we also have WIC, which is for women, infants, and children. So CalFresh, the max for a single adult is $194 a month. And there are no time limits, but there are a few things that you have to do to continue your eligibility. Every year you have to recertify, and every 6 months you have to submit a SAR 7. All these things can be done online, but if you fail to do either of them, you'll get terminated. So that happens to our clients a lot. A lot of our clients are homeless, and so they're bouncing around, and so they don't get notifications that they have to recertify. So it's important to remind them that that's going to happen if they do not. But again, our office can help get that back and get them back to being eligible if that does happen. And then to qualify for CalFresh, you have to be a citizen or a legal permanent resident, so have a green card. There's no county residence requirement, but you can't have CalFresh in different counties, so you can't double dip. You can only get it in one county. And there is no fingerprinting for CalFresh. So for example, for one person, your gross monthly income needs to be below $2,010. And luckily, California has eliminated almost all of the assets test. So like savings doesn't count towards your income, which is great. The car doesn't count towards your income anymore. And this is in recognition that, yeah, some people have a car and some people have savings, but they need to continue saving. And that shouldn't go towards their income because they still need assistance with food. And then people who aren't eligible, so convicted felons are eligible for this. Like I said, there's no fingerprinting. But if you're a parole or probation violator, or if you have any outstanding warrants, then you're not eligible for CalFresh. And then if you're getting SSI, you're not eligible. And if you're enrolled in higher education, you're also not eligible. There are a few exceptions that we won't get into, but you can contact us or the department if you have questions about that. And for CalFresh, it's 30 days that they have to do it, but there are expedited ways of getting it faster, which I'll get into. Does anyone have any questions? So calculating how many people are in a household determines the amount of benefit that you get. It doesn't necessarily mean how many people live in the house. It's how many people prepare the food together in the home. So like we have youth who rent out an apartment or a room in an apartment. If they are cooking their own food, they count as one person, even though they might live with another person in their unit. So it's the people who prepare and buy food together. Does that make sense? And then if you're part of the household, any income of anybody that's part of that household will count towards determining whether you qualify for benefits. And this is what I talked about. Emergency CalFresh is for single individuals. It's same day expedited CalFresh. DPSS's policy is 3 days, but in practice we see it usually the day of, unless you go in at like 3:30 p.m., then you're kind of running the clock. So you need to make sure to try to get there early to make sure that you get it that same day if you need it. And there's pretty strict requirements for that. So your income has to be either less than $150 a month, and you have to have less than $100 of cash on hand, or your monthly income and resources are less than your rent and utilities, or you're a migrant or seasonal farm worker, which we don't see a lot around here, but it's also another eligibility. And then lastly, we have WIC. So WIC is run through the WIC departments all throughout Los Angeles. You can go on the website to find the WIC office closest to you. People who are low income and pregnant, if your client's breastfeeding, or if they're postpartum, qualify for this. So the income eligibility, for example, for one household is roughly $22,000 that they have to make below to qualify for WIC. And if you are receiving like CalFresh or CalWORKs, you almost automatically will qualify for WIC. So if you have a pregnant or a parenting woman who is getting CalWORKs, you should recommend they go to the WIC office and apply. And then it can provide supplemental food, healthcare referrals. They also do like individualized nutrition plans and assessments with the women and the children. And then also if a father, not necessarily a woman, but if a father or another guardian or foster parent are caring for the child, they could also be eligible. Yeah.
Do they have to meet the same income requirement?
Yes.
Do you apply for WIC at the DPSS office the same place you'd apply for CalWORKs? Like, can you do both at once, or are they separate?
It's a separate office. Are you kidding?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Usually it takes a few days. If you're gonna do CalWORKs, you're gonna do that for a day, and then you're gonna have to go to the WIC office and do that. But there's a lot of locations.
Is there an age limit for the children?
Up to 5.
Up to 5?
All right, so how to apply, like obviously you guys don't need to know the ins and outs of how to apply, but I think it is important for you to potentially know like the ways of applying. A client can walk into DPSS, and I think I usually say that because it wasn't until recently that LA County actually created an online portal where folks could apply online, which is amazing because it used to be that if you were gonna walk into DPSS, you'd be there for a full day applying, and sometimes you'd have to come back the next day to finish the application. Now, you can go to dpssbenefits.lacounty.gov, or you could just Google apply for CalWORKs online, and I'm sure it would be the first thing that pops up. But you can, through there, you can do the application. You can also submit verifications online. So like, you know, if you have pay stubs or quarterly reporting forms for some of the benefits, you can submit those online as well. So it really saves your clients the time from going into the office. They can do a lot of this online now. And it's also important to know, as we've said, that the county does have 30 days from the day of your application to process it. So even if somebody applies online, they're probably still gonna have to wait at the most 30 days to see some cash aid. And I know that that's like not a great thing, but, and in the case of Medi-Cal, you have to wait 45 days. And certainly if you have a client who applied more than 30 days ago and they haven't received anything, you should refer to public counsel or refer to a legal aid, because we can provide assistance with them and do some advocacy on that. It's important also, like when somebody's applying for benefits, they have a lot of things that they're gonna need to bring into the office. So if you do suggest to one of your clients that they go apply, you should let them know, hey, there's like a laundry list of things that you should have with you, because all too often, and I've been in these DPSS offices talking to clients, they don't bring anything. They bring their ID or their social, but that's it. And there's so many more things that you need. A lot of times DPSS, if you don't have a lot of these things, they, again, will stop the application. They'll send you home and tell you to come back the next day or, you know, whenever you can to do the application. And that really throws our clients off because, like I said, there's that 30-day requirement. And like if the client goes home, but then they have like other things that they need to do and they don't have time to go back to DPSS, they might not go back for, you know, another week, and then that's a week more that they're gonna have to wait to get the benefits on their card. So that's why it's important to know the first time while they're going in, proof of income and resources. I know it says proof of county residency, but you don't, again, it's just like a sworn statement that you can provide. Proof of your housing, if you're applying for CalWORKs and you're pregnant and you don't have any kids in the household, then you want to bring verification of your pregnancy so that they can see how far along you are. Also for CalWORKs, if you have like child support, if you're divorced, if you have any sort of family law orders, you, as an applicant, you would want to bring that in. Because as part of the CalWORKs application for women, they will, you know, sue for child support if there's a father on the birth certificate. So they want to know that information.
For proof of housing situation, if the person is homeless, what would show they're homeless or what?
That's a good question. Self-certification. They can,
Oh, okay.
they can say like, I'm homeless, I have a place to stay. Yeah.
So what are
pregnant but doesn't have any of her children with her, can she still get CalWORKs benefits?
Oh, yes, yes. If she's pregnant but has no other children, she can qualify for CalWORKs after her first trimester. Before that, she would go to the GR office, and then you would think that DPSS would be able to successfully and easily transition someone from general relief to CalWORKs if they are pregnant, but no, that's not the case. What happens is that DPSS, in your second month of pregnancy, they give you a notice saying we're going to terminate you next month, and then you have to go to CalWORKs and reapply. So just making sure that you know, if your client is in the early stages of pregnancy, that she understands to do that, so then she can, you know, continue her benefits without interruption, because that happens a lot. And then also, you know, proof of citizenship and immigration status. That's a really important thing that we see a lot of our clients don't always have, but you know, if they do have those documents, they should bring them in when they're applying. All right, so here's a picture of an EBT card, and I don't know why it's obscuring that information on the bottom, but just important for you to know that all county benefits are distributed on these PIN-protected EBT cards, so it's just like an ATM card. The person can go to an ATM, put it in, and then get their cash aid. They can't withdraw CalFresh. CalFresh is limited, its uses are limited. It's really only for food. Can't buy toiletries, can't buy baby formula, you can't buy anything like that using CalFresh benefits. And also CalFresh, there is a program called the Restaurant Meals Program. So if your client is homeless, elderly, or disabled, hopefully they have the Restaurant Meals Program. I'm sure you guys like drive around LA and you see like in the fast food restaurants they have you know, like EBT accepted here. Those are restaurants in LA that participate in restaurant meals. So that's where, you know, like again, if you're homeless, you don't have like a hot stove or somewhere to prepare hot meals. So that's why you would be qualified for that program. But it's not every single person on CalFresh who can qualify for that. So that's important to know too. Yeah, it's a popular misconception. The other thing I want to say is that they do, for the cash aid, you go to an ATM and try to withdraw, they'll charge the ATM surcharge fee unless you're aware of ATMs that don't charge those fees. So ebt.ca.gov has like a list of ATMs that do not charge surcharges.
Oh God.
Yeah, because obviously, like if you're on GR and you get $221 a month, a $4 ATM charge really takes a bite out of that amount that you get. All right, so we kind of already went over this, but if your client's benefits are reduced or terminated, what you need to do as the ladle attorney is, you know, let your client know that they have like a very short period of time from when they're terminated to go back in and get their benefits reinstated. And that period is basically the third Thursday of the month following the incident of non-compliance. So if the client like didn't turn in the form and they were supposed to turn it in this month, then they would have until the third Thursday of April to go back into DPSS and turn the form in without getting to prevent themselves from having to go through the reapplication process and wait the 30 days. Instead, if they were able to do it within the time, they could get their benefits reinstated the same day. So that makes a big difference. The other thing that you should do is, if you don't remember that rule, refer to Public Counsel, refer to Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles, Neighborhood Legal Services. Those are all organizations that do benefits work. And can help that person. And now Neysa's going to talk about Medi-Cal.
All right. So, healthcare. Medi-Cal eligibility, you can receive if you're low income and are a California resident. So income limits are if you're below the federal poverty level, 138% below the federal poverty level, which is roughly $16,000 for a single person. Once you make over $16,000, you begin to share the cost of Medi-Cal. So, for example, say that you have to pay $100 towards your Medi-Cal every month. If you make hypothetically $20,000, you'll pay $100 and then Medi-Cal will cover the rest. And it resets every month. So if you pay $100 in January and then Medi-Cal covers the rest, in February you start over and you're gonna have to pay $100 again. So we'd recommend for clients to lump everything that they need to buy for healthcare if they can into 1 month. So if you have several prescriptions, try to do it all in 1 month so you can meet that share of your costs and then have Medi-Cal cover the rest. Does that make sense?
That's good advice.
We'll try. And then if you get CalWORKs, SSI, if you're in foster care, or certain refugee benefits, you just get Medi-Cal automatically and you shouldn't have to do anything. I say that because I have seen where that actually didn't happen and then we have to go in and contact DPSS and figure out what's going on. And then for low-income undocumented immigrant children, if you're under 19, you're actually now eligible in California for Medi-Cal, which is great. And then, so a California resident, you just have to prove that you intend to stay in California. So you can do that by like bringing proof that your kid is enrolled in California, if you have a driver's license, if you're employed in California, anything that just proves that you intend to stay within California. So that's pretty broad. And this is what the card looks like. It's called a BIC. So you'll receive this little plastic Medi-Cal card to your address. And then each person listed on your application will get one of these. And your share of cost, the $100 that I talked about, counts to all the people who are on your application. So if you have a client with 2 kids and you're paying $50 for one and $50 for the other, that counts, and then Medi-Cal will cover the rest after that. Any questions?
On the previous slide, it said that if you were in foster care, so any of our clients who are now parents that were in foster care automatically get Medi-Cal?
Once they exit the foster care system, they should automatically get Medi-Cal. And that's when we see where that doesn't necessarily happen, but usually it's something that's easy that we can fix.
Is that something they're eligible for the rest of their life?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Because if they exit the system and then their income goes up, they're not gonna be eligible.
Sorry, I don't know the answer to that question.
That's okay, I did.
And so BIC will cover prescription meds, mental health services. So there's a lot of mental health services that they can receive, including mental health evaluations and treatments by a psychologist, psychiatric consultations, specialty mental health services provided by the county, developing cognitive skills to improve like your attention and your memory skills, outpatient laboratories, drugs, etc. So there's really a lot of options that Medi-Cal will cover for mental health services. And I know there's a lot of rules that we've gone over and it's a little confusing and there's a lot of different types of benefits. And I know manuals aren't always the most helpful things in the world, but this one actually is. This is really helpful for non-attorneys as well. I actually carry one in my bag all the time. It's broken down into each, like CalWORKs has 5 pages, CalFresh has a few pages, and it's just really easy to flip to and find any answers to questions, documents you might need, income eligibility, etc. So that's a really good resource to use.
And they update it every year. Yeah. It's a really, I can't recommend this enough. It's available online, but you can also order it. I think it's like a small fee, like a couple dollars, and you can actually get paper copies. But it has everything, like all the different benefits, all the different ways that you qualify, and all the things that we've talked about in this presentation are going to be in there. And like I said, it's available online now. You would just Google Hunger Action LA Welfare Guide to Benefits, and you can like look up any of the stuff that we've discussed.
Or download and print it.
As well. Yes.
All right, we have a few minutes for housing.
Yes. And so has anybody heard of the coordinated entry system? No? A little bit? Oh my god, okay. So coordinated entry system, this is like the most important thing you need to know if you're living in Los Angeles and you have clients who need housing. This is like a system that was really put into place and implemented, like with Proposition HHH and all those other like homeless reforms, trying to create all these linkages between organizations to who are all serving the same kinds of clients, right? Like homeless clients living in Los Angeles, to get them like more coordinated and more rapidly into housing. So there are, like the coordinated entry system, there's 3 different kinds. There's a CES for families, there's one for youth, and there's also one for single individuals. So it's important to know that because you need to know like which CES system you're going to be referring your clients to if they need housing. And anybody that needs housing should be referred here because it's the entry point for anyone to get housing in LA. Now, different entry points are so every service planning area in LA County has a different like location where someone can go and like apply or fill out like a survey in order to be input into the coordinated entry system. Also, you can call 211, your client can call 211. I know that like 211 kind of sucks though. So, I mean, I would always tell people to like probably go down in person. Because sometimes on 211 you're like waiting and waiting and waiting for like a technician to pick up the phone and talk to you. If you want to find your client's spa, you can just like Google find the spa that I'm in, and then you can input like the zip code of your client, and then you should be able to see what service planning district they live in, so you can refer them to the right location. And luckily, I have the regional agencies for each spa included in this PowerPoint presentation. So as you can see, like adults and families would go to St. Joseph Center in Spa 5, which is West LA. If you're a youth, then you want to refer them to a nonprofit called Safe Place for Youth. That would be the entry system for that person to go and fill out the survey and enter the coordinated entry system. So, they're all listed here, they're all different organizations, and they're all across LA County. I'm going to speak particularly to CES for families, because I think that might be the most relevant. But like I said, you start off by getting a community referral, maybe one of you refers your client. DPSS can also do the referrals, and should be doing those referrals, Department of Mental Health, and then also calling 211. And once that person is like referred to the system, they do what's called a coordinated assessment. And so it's like I said, it's a survey. They fill out, all this information about themselves, input their personal information, and in order for the people who run the coordinated entry systems to kind of, it's like you put them on a scale of need, right? So like maybe somebody is imminently at risk of homelessness, but they're not homeless yet. Their level of need might be a little lower on the scale than someone who is, like actually homeless living out of their car. So all the individuals who come in through the coordinated entry system are, kind of ranked according to level of need as determined by the survey. And so, then you go over here, if the person's literally homeless, then you're talking about like doing crisis housing, crisis stabilization. So the coordinated, like the folks at the coordinated entry system who are like assisting this client should be diverting them into, emergency shelters and emergency housing. If someone's at imminent risk, then they're gonna be targeting prevention, trying to divert them. So like referring them to agencies like ours that can do some pre-eviction legal assistance maybe to prevent them from becoming homeless. Suffice it to say that they kind of travel through this system, eventually getting referred to like something called rapid rehousing, which is a program whereby you're put on a waiting list for one of the nonprofit organizations that that provide transitional housing, and then again, like it is a waiting list. So be aware that referring your client to CES is not going to get them housed immediately. We are in a shortage of housing, but at least like you get them into the system, you get them on those waiting lists. So it's important that you know that this is a thing. Hopefully, you know, at the end of the day, somebody eventually makes their way over to getting into community-based services, so like meaning like mental health services or supportive services to deal with like maybe tangential issues related to their homelessness. And then finally, either permanent supportive housing, if this person has like a mental health condition or something where they're not going to be able to maintain housing on their own, or community-based permanent housing, so that includes things like Section 8 or subsidized housing programs. But to be honest with you, like the Section 8 housing waiting list opened late last year. They took 20,000 individuals and they put them on the waiting list, and the Section 8 waiting list is now closed. So if your client's not already on that waiting list, I don't know when the next time they're going to open it is. So you should just be aware that that's not really an option. Like, don't refer them to Section 8. Hopefully, they're on the waiting list. But like I said, there's 20,000 people on the waiting list, which is insane. All right. So other resources for public benefits. We have a project at Public Counsel called CARES, where we have advocates go into DPSS offices and provide direct services to the individuals who are applying for benefits or have been terminated. So we're in DPSS periodically, making sure that they're doing their jobs. People's Guide to Welfare Benefits, again, a great resource. I can't emphasize it enough. If you have like questions or concerns about like whether someone qualifies or like what a client needs to maybe take to the DPSS office or what sort of services the benefits program provides, you can look to this guide. CalFresh Benefits, Legal Services of Northern California has an amazing guide on specifically CalFresh. And we have a link to the website here, but you can just Google Legal Services of Northern California. It should lead you directly to their guide. And then always, if your client is living in LA County and they're having issues or problems, they can call us, Public Counsel. I would also highly recommend Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles as another resource for them, or Neighborhood Legal Services. Because again, we all are doing that benefits work and that benefits advocacy for clients. That's it.
I think they are maybe available for another minute if people have questions they want to ask individually, but I've got the forms. Just bring your evaluations up. Thank you. See you later.
Bye-bye.